everybody. Welcome to Facts on Friday. I'm Jesse Zerwell here, as always, with Misty Winston. Today is the 21st of January, and as per usual, we have a raft of news stories to cover, so we're going to get right into it with some Assange news.
Yes. Okay. So, as you guys know, we have been kind of in a holding pattern again, as they like to keep us. So, we've been waiting for word on whether or not the High Court would certify the request for an appeal. So, we have received word, this just broke this morning, that they are going to be reading that decision on Monday morning. So, 10:45 London time, which is 5:45 Eastern time. I am going to be getting up early in the morning to cover that live on Action for Assange. I'm pretty sure Eric's going to be joining me, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it. But he said he thinks he's going to be able to. But we are going to be up covering it live. So if you are awake at that ungodly hour, you can join us. But it definitely needs to be something that's covered live. So just so everybody knows kind of what this court date means, there's a really great breakdown that Tariq Haddad put out on Twitter today. So I'm going to share that with you guys so we can kind of discuss what this all means. So he said, breaking in Assange case, the British High Court will hand down a ruling as to whether the WikiLeaks publisher can appeal his U.S. extradition case to the Supreme Court at 10:45 on Monday, 24 January. The ruling will determine whether the High Court, quote, certifies, end quote, that the grounds raised by Assange's defense have sufficient legal merit and public importance. If the application is certified, the Supreme Court appeal can proceed. If not, the case goes back to Westminster Magistrates Court, where District Judge Vanessa Breitzer has been directed to send the case to Secretary of State Priti Patel to sign the order for extradition. She will then have 2 months to sign the order. If she does, only then can Assange's defense team raise a new challenge to the High Court, where they will seek to cross-appeal the points that went against him in District Judge Breitzer's January 2021 ruling. Assange's defense also still has the option to lodge a case with the European Court of Human Rights, though I am told they are unsure whether to commence this process now or wait until the domestic appeals process is further along or exhausted. So basically what this means is on Monday, the British High Court is going to be reading their ruling as to whether or not Assange has a basis for appeal. Because as you guys know, in December, I think it was December 10th, the courts ruled against Assange and for the extradition to proceed. Assange's team obviously immediately appealed that. So they're just whether or not they will be granting that right to appeal. So there are a couple different ways that this could go. If it is certified, then the appeal to the Supreme Court will go forward. If it is not certified, it is basically sent back to Judge Vanessa Breitzer, who has been instructed to just rubber stamp it, send it to Priti Patel, who then has 2 months to decide whether or not she wants to approve it. If she approves it, it is then, that's the signing of the order of the extradition. That's a big step. There are still a couple other things that they can do. Like they said, they can go to the European Court of Human Rights. That's a whole other ball of wax. But the one here, the fourth tweet that he put out, this is kind of a big one because if Priti Patel signs the order, that gives Assange's defense team an opening to then challenge the High Court, where they can then cross appeal all of the points that went against him in the January ruling, which that's all of the like fleshy stuff, like the really important First Amendment, free speech, free press, all of that stuff. So that then opens that opportunity for them to, because they haven't even cross appealed on those merits yet. They've only appealed on the basis of the mental health aspect. So none of the like the points of contention as in terms of like the threat to press freedom and all of the things that Breitzer basically just read the prosecution's case for them again. None of that stuff has been appealed. So that's kind of a big deal. So this is all happening on Monday, you guys. So Monday at 10:45 London time, that's 5:45 Eastern time, which means that's like 2:45 Pacific. If you are a night owl or if you wake up really early, come join us. I'm going to be really tired, but we will be up and covering it on the Action for Assange channels on both Rockfin and YouTube. But this is a big one. This is a big court date. This is a big deal. I will not sleep all weekend. Here we go again.
To the best of my knowledge, Priti Patel isn't the biggest fan
No,
of press freedom,
no.
and I'm not sure why she needs 2 months to read what's being delivered to
That's
her.
what she is. That's the time allotted legally.
Mhm.
So that's just the way that it works out, like, as far as the process. That's how the process is laid out in British law.
So no
Um,
rush there.
there's never any rush in this case, you guys. We're always in. I mean, think about it. He's been in. I mean, April it'll be 3 years. April it'll be 3 years that he's been in Belmarsh on remand. I mean, like, there's no charge or anything currently. He served his 50 weeks for the quote unquote bail jumping that wasn't bail jumping. And every second he has been in there past the point of those 50 weeks, he has been there as a remand prisoner. It's insanity. So I have no idea what to expect. Probably bad things. It's probably not going to go in our favor. None of this stuff ever does. Like I've said before, we're not going to get a solution to this through the legal system. as they've made quite clear, they are in no way, they feel no pressure whatsoever to do the actual legal and just thing here. So I'm not expecting good news. I would love to be pleasantly surprised. But really all this does, I mean, we're not going to get, like, he's not going to get out on Monday. He's not going to get extradited on Monday. This is just another one of those forks in the road to see which direction we're going to be heading in. So Mary Costaquitas put out a great tweet. I think it was yesterday, where she kind of laid out the different scenarios as well. And she said that, this could be, maybe 2 more years for him in Belmarsh, which is ridiculous to think about. I can't imagine still talking about this 2 years from now. But then again, when we started Action for Assange, I couldn't imagine being here 3 years later. So I don't know.
Just to
Uh,
point to the hypocrisy that's been rank throughout this whole process, if you even wanna call it a process, I read a Daily Mail piece. I don't have it on hand to pull up from earlier this week about, I believe, a UK government affiliated individual or formerly affiliated with the UK government, who's now an elderly man in his 70s or 80s, who was found to be in possession of a large amount of child pornography on his computer. And he was on trial for that possession, and the judge, citing his age and health conditions, declined to send him to jail. And even the man himself was surprised, so surprised, in fact, that he gasped in court when the decision was handed down. Meanwhile, Julian Assange, who's guilty of nothing, continues to rot in Belmarsh.
Not only
So,
does he continue to rot, but he gets to sit in a tiny room in Belmarsh watching the legal proceedings take place in the courtroom, where he's unable to participate as they're calling him a malingerer and telling everybody that he's faking his illnesses in the middle of him having a mini stroke. So that's, I still like, that's still like that mental image of Julian Assange being in a room, staring at a screen, literally watching people call him a faker and a liar and a malingerer, saying that he's, being overly dramatic about his health issues as he's literally having a mini stroke, is just stunning. It really
compounded by
is.
the fact that we can never get a clear image of him, whether it's
No.
in court or watching his proceedings from elsewhere. We get these
Well, those are
very
leaked like that. They're not even supposed to be taking those pictures. Whoever is taking those pictures, which I know who it is, but I'm not going to say who. But they're not. That's not supposed to be something that happens.
right, but the graininess of those images, for me at least, adds to how disturbing this all is. This show trial, to say the least.
Yeah, yeah. So here we go. Here we go again. So it is Free Assange Friday. I forget. I think it was Bacon for President. I think that's the Twitter handle. Came up with that last week, Free Assange Friday. I think every Friday now needs to be Free Assange Friday. And if you guys can, be really loud about this all weekend long. Make as much noise about it as you can. Retweet all of the Assange tweets that you see. Tweet your own Assange tweets. Talk to people about it. Converse with people about it. Share information. The only way we're going to be able to actively or effectively combat this is if we get people loud. That's it. That's it. So here we go. Monday, 10:45 London time. That's the next Next court date. So, again, I don't have a lot of hope. Um, I consider myself to be a fairly realistic person, and nothing about this case has been legal or just or fair so far. So I don't know why that would change now, but we shall see. Hopefully we get some good news. Really, there isn't necessarily good news. Even if they certify the appeal, that just means that the appeal moves forward. It doesn't mean anything of any significance. It just means that they're kicking the can down the road a bit farther, and the appeal will then have to be played out, which will be dragged out for as long as humanly possible as he languishes in a supermax prison. So,
But you, along with many other good people, no matter what happens, can say that you fought for his freedom this whole time and you didn't give up, you didn't back down. And there is something to be said for that, for not just you, but everybody who's been doing that. And it's a testimony to how many people out there are truly committed to justice.
yes. And there's so many people that I could name, but I won't because I'll forget people and feel bad. But yeah, you guys know who you are. There's a whole lot of people doing amazing work and fighting this good fight with everything that they have. And, we need help. So help us, please. We need help. We really do. We can only do so much. We need numbers. And a huge part of the way that we get numbers is by spreading the information, because as everybody knows, this case has been plagued with a serious, just an unbelievable amount of misinformation, smear campaigns, propaganda, lies, straight up lies. So just informing people about what's actually happening and the significance of it is a huge part of the battle. And everybody can do that. That's super easy to do. Tweeting about it, talking to your friends and family about it, posting about it on Facebook if you're so brave. Facebook is a whole other animal. But yeah, like we just getting the information out there is a huge thing. I'm going to, my dearest friend Deepa wrote an amazing 1-page, I guess like just like a brief about the case. That's very informative. She fits like a really amazing amount of information into, I guess I could, here, I'll just post the link to the tweet. But it's like just a quick 1-page, like I guess just like a brief where it just talks about the case, what it means, what he's facing, all of the nonsense that's gone on, the CIA stuff, the Siggy Thorderson stuff, all of that stuff is just in a 1-page thing. It's a really awesome thing that you can easily share with friends and family that they can read. It's like a good like starter. There are a multitude of videos and stuff that you can also check out. Obviously, Juan Passarelli's documentary is also great. It's, like 48 minutes long, and it's very informative. There's a great video by Matt
Timeless.
Kennard. Huh?
Timeless, Juan's film.
Yes. And he really does manage to pack like just a shit ton of information into, I think it's like 40, is it like 48 minutes, 42 minutes, something like that. It's under 50 minutes. And it's just an amazing amount of information that is just sucked into that documentary. So that's a fantastic place to start. The Matt Kennard video is a really great, like easy starter video. It's just like, hey, it's under 5 minutes and it's like, hey, this is why you should care. It doesn't get into the weeds. It just gives you like a brief, this is why this is important. This is the impact this is going to have on all of us, that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, just getting the information out there is really just a huge part of the battle. So if you guys can help us with that, we would really appreciate it. Seriously.
And that's what'll be going down in April in DC as well.
What?
Getting the information out there.
Oh yeah. So the DC thing, I think I'm pretty convinced, I've pretty much convinced myself that we're gonna do a dual protest. So do 2 in one day. I don't know which we'll do first, but we're gonna do the British Embassy and also the Department of Justice. So we're gonna, as we do at all of our events, we'll have informational packets to hand out to people who are walking by. We're gonna have megaphones. We're gonna be really loud. We'll have, all of our banners out, all of that stuff, just trying to bring awareness and attention to what's happening. And just trying to it's just about trying to get attention. Yeah, we'll do what we can. I depending on what happens on Monday, I don't know if that will change our plans at all. I don't foresee that it will, because I mean, it really, again, this is not like there's no like a hard decision being made here. This is just, is the appeal going to be heard or not? So I don't think it's really going to impact whether or not we go in April. So we're still looking at April 11th. If you're in DC, I guess I could post the GoFundMe link as well. If you guys can help us get to DC, the more we raise, the more we can do. So I will post the link for that in the chat as well. If you guys can help us out, that would be great. Or just sharing the link is also very helpful. But yeah, it's really go time. I mean, it's been go time for a while, but like the farther we creep down this path, the more intense it gets. So, you know, here we go. Here we go again.
And hopefully the bars of the COVID mandate cage that DC has created will be lifted by that point.
I don't even care. Like the whole right now, it's you can't go to restaurants and bars and stuff. Fine. I won't spend my money in DC. That's fine by me. We'll go grocery shopping before we hit DC and we'll eat at the Airbnb. And we'll just go to our events. I don't care. That's fine. I really do not care. If you don't want me to spend my money in DC, I'm fine with not spending my money in DC. You know what I'm saying? So, obviously we have to pay for the Airbnb, but if that's the only dollar that I spend in DC, I'm okay with that. So we're still going to go. We're still going to do what we can. And yeah, we just need help to get there. That's all. That's all I got for Assange, though, I think. I'm so stressed out. I'm so stressed out, you guys. Okay, so do you want to jump to, you want to go through my stuff since most of yours is COVID stuff? And just do yours at the end. Okay. So this is it kind of goes along with Assange as well. Some of you may have already seen this. It's a whole load of garbage. Let me get it. Whoops, wrong one.
Tarek Haddad, I should note, whose thread you showed at the beginning of the show, was the first guest on Facts on the Ground.
Yes, that was before I joined.
Yep. But you were there in spirit.
Okay, so here we go, guys. You're pushing Joe Biden left. Doing a great job. So Stephen Donziger tweeted out, breaking, outraged to learn that Biden has named Chevron lawyer Jennifer Reardon to be a federal judge. She was paid millions at Gibson Dunn to help jail me, attack indigenous peoples, and cover up a massive oil spill in the Amazon. Biden must align with Planet Earth, corrupt. And then he also puts, it's The Intercept, so I'm not going to share it, but this is not a good person. She has financial ties to Kirsten Gillibrand. And this is what you get when you vote for Joe Biden. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to pretend to be shocked and outraged by this. And what did you expect? I mean, it's just really silly at this point. So there is a great article that I will pull up for you guys that kind of goes into who this person is. I wish sharing stuff was easier on this site. Okay, here we go. So Biden renominates, it's a Trump pick, by the way. This is also a Trump pick that he is renominating. Okay. And GOP donor Jennifer Reardon as a federal judge. President Joe Biden yesterday nominated a slate of judges, including a controversial selection in Jennifer Reardon, who was first nominated for the federal bench by former President Donald Trump. Reardon, a partner at Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher LLP with the firm's litigation and crisis management practices group, was nominated by Biden to serve as a United States District Judge for the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. Trump had originally nominated her for the seat in February 2020, but her nomination expired at the end of the 116th Congress without action from the Senate. In her nomination questionnaire, Reardon explains that she has mainly represented corporations, and commentators on the left have raised concerns about some of the cases she has taken up. In her list of 10 important litigation matters she included in the questionnaire, Reardon highlighted a case where she represented New York real estate company LaFrock against allegations that they had discriminated against tenants living with HIV and AIDS. Reardon got the complaint dismissed in that case. In a section highlighting her pro bono work, Reardon helped a charter school organization overturn a New York Department of Labor ruling that charter schools were subject to prevailing wage requirements. Reardon's corporate clients have included Home Depot, Uber, Lehman Brothers, Barclays Capital, and Patriarch Partners. Her firm represented Chevron in its lawsuit against environmental and human rights attorney Stephen Donziger, and The Intercept reports that Reardon worked on the case. But it's not just her case history that may be surprising for a Biden nominee. It's not surprising at all. If you're surprised by this, you're a fool. Reardon has long been a donor to Republican politicians in the tri-state area. Psst, Biden's a Republican. In December 2015, Reardon donated the legal maximum of $2,700 to then New Jersey Governor Chris Christie as he sought the Republican nomination for president. Earlier that year, she donated $1,000 to former House Republican Dan Donovan, who represented the 11th District of New York, that includes Staten Island and parts of Brooklyn. Reardon has also donated $2,300 to former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani during his 2008 run for president, and $500 to Dick Zimmer, a former Republican Senate candidate in New Jersey. Reardon has also donated to some Democrats, and she has donated more to New York Democratic Senator Kristen Gillibrand than any other politicians. Reardon has donated more than $38,000 combined to Gillibrand's Senate campaigns, 2020 presidential campaign, and leadership PAC. And in her questionnaire, she states that she has co-hosted several fundraisers for the senator at Gibson Dunn's New York office. Describing her path towards being selected for a federal judgeship, Reardon highlighted the importance of Gillibrand in that process. In May 2016, I expressed an interest in serving as a U.S. District Judge for the Southern District of New York to Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. From that time through November 2019, I periodically had contact with Senator Gillibrand and her office. So, again, nobody should be surprised by this. Joe Biden is a Republican. I don't know why people are still acting shocked when he does stuff like this. He's a Republican. He calls himself a Democrat, but he's corporate. And this is par for the course. Nobody should be surprised or shocked. Stephen Donziger has every right to be outraged by it. It's disgusting. We should all be outraged by it, but nobody should be surprised. This is who Joe Biden is.
And when we look at what Chevron is responsible for doing in the Amazon, it's hideous, almost beyond description. It's destroyed indigenous environments and communities, probably permanently. And I would again point people to the documentary Crude, that's CRUDE, that came out in 2009, I believe. And it lays out the story very well of what happened there and is obviously still relevant today. And Stephen Donziger, of course, was involved in taking to task Chevron for what essentially amount to crimes against humanity if you put them in the proper light. And what happened? Stephen Donziger was temporarily jailed, facing a ludicrous
And he's
prison
still,
sentence.
speaking of which, let me bring this up as well while we're talking about Stephen Donziger. If you guys can, hold on, let me bring up his page. Okay, so if you guys can, today is his 900th day of, here we go, his 900th day of being in prison because he's still on house arrest. So he is asking that if you can, take a picture. Susan Sarandon did one of 900 days with the freedonziger.com and hashtag at Chevron cleanup, and post it on social media to raise awareness for that and to demand that he be fully released from the judicial system. He should have never been arrested in the first place. So while we're speaking about Stephen Donziger, if you can do that, take a picture, share it around on social media.
And for all the problems I have with Chris Hedges and his response to the injections, his show On Contact did a very good episode with Stephen Donziger and really went into not just this case, but also what it's like for Donziger on a day-to-day basis to be under house arrest, how oppressive it really is. It sounds like a club fed type situation, but it's far from that. He has to wear a very cumbersome and painful ankle monitor. He is essentially not allowed to leave his apartment for any reason, barring perhaps medical reasons. So even though he's not in jail, he's still very much under the thumb of a dictatorial government,
The
now
Bureau of
run
Prisons.
by Biden. And we can see that with the appointment of this judge by Biden, that there is no difference, as we always say, between administrations. It's a continuum with trivial differences, wedge issue differences, and they're all committed to injustice, to persecuting whistleblowers, people who fight for indigenous people's rights, etc.
Yes. And it's only going to get worse the more that it's allowed to continue. So, and we are the ones allowing it to continue. We can fight back against it. That's the only way it stops. So, if you can post your picture about the 900 days for Steven Sonsinger, please do that. Talk about the fact that Joe Biden has just nominated this sad sack of garbage to be a federal judge. And we should also mention that this, again, is no surprise because the Democrats fast-tracked a crap ton of judges for Donald Trump. I mean, they use this against us every 4 years, right? We got to vote blue because, what about the courts? What about the courts? They fast-tracked hundreds of federal judges across the country under Donald Trump. Didn't just approve them, vote for them. No, they fast tracked that because they wanted to go home. They want to go on vacation or whatever. My friend, if you guys follow Gay Waiter Paul on Twitter, he's amazing. You should be following him anyway. I love Gay Waiter Paul. I love
Paul
Paul.
Sorrentino.
Yes, he's amazing. I think it's at Paul Sorrentino 3 because this is his third account, I think. But he is a must follow. And during that time period, he was keeping track. He may still know how many it was exactly, but there were hundreds of federal judges who were approved and fast-tracked by Democrats. So every time they try to use that, but the court's thing, you can bring that up, and you can also bring up this federal judge that is a Trump appointee that Joe Biden is now reappointing or what's the word? Nominating. Sorry, my brain's a little fuzzy.
Which also gives the lie to all their proclamations of caring about the environment and committing to net zero policies by 2050. If they really cared, why would they be persecuting somebody like Steven Donziger, who is very clearly fighting for environmental rights, indigenous rights, etc.? It really gives the lie to all of that talk, which we've known from the beginning was a lie, but we should always point out the examples when they come up.
Yes, that's a great point. That's a really great point because they love to pretend. Democrats love to pretend that they care about the environment, right? They're all about it until it comes down to something like this. And then, they're appointing a Chevron judge, basically, so.
And they're not going to stick their necks out against corporations in 2022 with the midterms coming up because they need all the corporate money they can get to almost certainly lose, but they still are under the delusion that they can pull out a win. But they are not going to go into any kind of substantial criticism of corporate malfeasance at this point in time.
Yeah.
Not that they ever do.
Okay, so our next story, we can segue very easily into this because it's also an environmental story. As you guys know, we covered Red Hill, the Red Hill leak or tanks. I think that was 2 weeks ago. Maybe it was last week. I don't know. All my shows blur together. So excuse me. We have some updates that are not great. So I'm going to start with an article that discusses. Oh, hold on. It helps if I actually. I'm such a hot mess today, you guys. I'm trying desperately to get off of all my medications, which includes my ADHD meds. It's not going well. It's really not. I successfully got off my antidepressants, though, guys. I'm done with those.
Congrats.
Thank you. But my ADHD meds, it's a little bit tougher. I'm struggling a little bit. Okay. Oh, shut up. All right, here we go. So this is from Honolulu Civil Beat. Lawmakers, Red Hill fuel leaked into well through a pipeline the Navy didn't know existed. So this is, be prepared to be outraged because here we go. Navy officials didn't know about the pipeline until someone reviewed the facility schematics from 1941. Lawmakers who took a tour said they were told. So the jet fuel that contaminated the drinking water of thousands of military families spewed from a Red Hill fuel facility pipeline and went directly into the water supply by way of a drain line that the Navy didn't even know was there. The Navy told state lawmakers during a tour last week. Representative Sonny Ganadin? Don't know. Who was on the tour said that the drain line is a few inches in diameter and looks like a hole in the floor of the tunnel. It was installed to collect naturally occurring moisture and drain it into the Red Hill drinking water well, he said, except during a November 20 leak, it didn't collect water. It took a, quote, direct injection, end quote, of fuel. That sounds really healthy. They didn't know it was there, he said. It's the worst case scenario. So this is them. Obviously, this is a photo of them showing this is the hole that they're talking about. And so this is a drain line that leads directly into the drinking water. And during a leak in November, this was getting, as they said, a direct injection of fuel. So this is bad. Navy officials didn't know about the drain line until someone reviewed the facility schematics from 1941. Two other lawmakers on the tour, Senator Donna Mercado Kim and City Councilwoman Radiant Cordero, corroborated Ganadin's recollection of the Navy's explanation. For Cordero, that disclosure was deeply troubling and raises additional doubts about how well the Navy is running the World War II era facility. Not well. They're not running it well. I don't think that that's really in question.
I think you're safe in that assessment.
Yes, I feel pretty solid about making that statement. Quote, if they don't know the blueprints of the fuel tank facility, what else do they not know? End quote, she said. Quote, if we don't know this, how will you even assess what needs to be fixed? End quote. Both Ganadin and Cordero said the tour confirmed their belief that the Red Hill fuel facility needs to be permanently shut down. In a statement, Navy spokeswoman Lydia Robertson said that the Navy has provided, quote, information and context, end quote, to local and state leaders, but that those discussions are based on working theories, not definitive causes. Well, that really just makes me feel good about it.
Which begs the question, what is the Navy doing?
Nothing.
If it's only providing, can you scroll up just a bit? If
information
it's only
and context.
Yeah, information and context, working theories, but not definitive causes. What is it doing down there?
Nothing. They're trying to fight closing it. They've been fighting this for years, trying to close this thing. That's all they've been doing. They didn't even know this damn hole in the ground existed. It's been poisoning people, and they've been fighting closing this thing. This is really disgusting. And I'm honestly just disappointed in myself that I just learned about this recently. Okay, so this is again a picture from the January 6th tour. Where they're showing the fire suppression drain line that released 14,000 gallons of water and fuel on November 20th. 14,000 gallons, direct injection into the drinking water. I'm so disgusted. Okay. Quote, the Pacific Fleet investigation is not yet complete and is looking at many aspects of the incidents, end quote, she said. Quote, it would be premature to identify a definite cause until the investigation is concluded and released, end quote. Navy officials have said previously that they believe that the water contamination was caused by 2 leaks last year. The first on May 6th released over 1,600 gallons of jet fuel after a pipeline burst in the lower access tunnel of the facility, according to the Navy, which blamed the incident on, quote, human error, end quote. After initially indicating that all the fuel was captured, the Navy later acknowledged it was not. Last month, officials told lawmakers that as much as 19,000 gallons of fuel may have also been released on that day from one of the Red Hill tanks, the Honolulu Star-Advertiser reported. Officials now believe some of the fuel that leaked on May 6th ended up in a drain line of the facility's fire suppression system that is supposed to capture water and firefighting foam after a fire. That drain line leads from the facility's tunnels to an above-ground storage tank. For reasons that are not yet clear, water and fuel sat in a section of that drain line for months, the Navy has said. According to the Navy, it was released when an operator allegedly drove a cart into the fire suppression drain line, hitting a valve and allowing fuel-contaminated water to spill out. From there, according to lawmakers on the tour, the fuel pulled into a low point in the walkway of the tunnel where the trolley path is located and made its way into the drain line that leads to the drinking water well. On November 28th, the Navy said it received a wave of complaints from nearby residents reporting a fuel smell in their water and family members falling ill because of it. Since then, thousands of families have been displaced from their homes. Several investigations have been launched, and the Hawaii Department of Health has ordered the Navy to remove fuel from the Red Hill facility. So there's that.
Where are the Democrats on this? The Build Back Better Democrats?
Nobody's talking about it, Jesse.
Right.
They're not talking about it.
Which again gives the lie to not just the Democrats, not just the Republicans, but the process, the existence of electoral politics across the board. These people really don't care about issues that seriously affect human health and human welfare when they're right there in front of them.
Yes, and Phenomenal Mysticism says those pipelines seem to be very unstable and they break too easily. They're old as fuck. These are from 1938 to 1941 is when they were built. They're unable to be accessed. There's no way for them to access them to regularly check them to see if they need to be making repairs. So it's like a concrete thing, and then there's like a liner on the inside. There's no way to get to the outside to see if there's any damage or cracks or anything like that. And this stuff just seeps into the ground there, which is bad. Very, very bad. This is all very, very bad. So, and that's not even it. We got more.
I can't understand why the Navy is so insistent upon keeping the facility open.
I think it's convenience. It's money. It's not, I mean, you know, it's a profit thing, and it's going to take, it's going to cost money to drain it. You know what I mean? Like it will cost money to drain it. It's so bad. So that's not even the worst of it. So I have some more for you guys from Red Hill. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it could be the worst of it, but it's, you know, not the only bad thing. So here we go. So this is what, I'm not going to try to pronounce the Hawaiian thing because I'll butcher it and I'll just feel bad. But Pearl Harbor. So this is what it looks like after the U.S. Navy flushed millions of gallons of water through their fuel-contaminated water lines out into the sea in an effort to clear the pipes. So, and then, so here's what it looks like now. Did that come up?
Yep.
Okay. So see all this? Not good.
Pu'aloa, I believe.
I'm guessing, but I always feel bad when I mispronounce things in a beautiful language such as Hawaiian, and I don't want to be that person. So this is what it looks like now, with all of the oil and crap in the water. And then they also shared a picture from what it used to look like. And as you can see, there's none of that there. So the Navy is just flushing this stuff out into the ocean.
And has there been any assessment done as to the long-term effects of this?
Probably not. Well, I don't know that there has been any that have been made public. I'm sure that the Navy has some stuff that they've done in an effort to get in front of covering their asses. But I mean, they're contaminating the drinking water of thousands of people. And it's not even, I mean, not to say that this is like the Navy personnel should be treated any better or worse than any other human being, but the Navy is literally poisoning their own people, like Navy personnel and their families, which is a whole other level.
And those working on it, I would think, are mostly the rank and file, as they're often referred to, and the orders are coming from above, and somebody up above is making the decision to pursue keeping this open despite the fact that it continues to poison people and their environment.
Yeah.
I would like to know who that person is.
Yes. So just one more story on the Red Hill thing, to kind of tie this up, just so everybody knows what's going on as far as legal action. There are some lawsuits that are being prepared, rightfully so. I highly support all of this. So this is the Stars and Stripes outlet, which, I mean, you know, take that for what it is, but you know, it's a pretty decent article about what's going on here. So personal injury firms prepare to sue Navy for water contamination. This was put out yesterday. So former Hawaii Attorney General Marjorie Bronster has paired up with a mainland firm to seek compensation for Navy water users, marking the latest legal action taken in response to the Navy's Red Hill water contamination saga. Other firms have taken aim at private housing companies, which are easier to sue. Bronster's firm, Bronster Fujichaku? I don't know. I'm sorry. Robbins Attorneys at Law and a mainland personal injury firm, McCune Wright Arvalo, God, I suck at names, are taking aim at the Navy itself. Quote, "We are looking forward to fighting the fight," end quote, said Bronster during a press conference Wednesday morning. The Federal Tort Claims Act, which governs legal claims against the federal government, makes it more difficult to sue the federal government. An administrative claim must first be filed with the Navy seeking monetary compensation. Following a decision by the Navy's Judge Advocate General, the claimant then has the option of taking the case to court. The law firms already have indicated that they do not expect the claims to be treated to their satisfaction and are gearing up for a class action lawsuit. A spokeswoman for the Navy said that it was too late on Wednesday afternoon to reach the Washington, D.C. office that handles legal matters for a response. Top Navy officials in recent weeks have indicated that they are already preparing for monetary claims resulting from the water contamination. They have provided to military families and civilians information about the process of filing claims for any personal property loss and began a health registry for military families on the Navy's water systems to help track any long-term health effects that may be attributed to the water contamination. In late November, residents on the Navy's water system in and around Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickman began reporting a fuel or chemical odor coming from their taps, as well as health symptoms such as headaches, rashes, vomiting, and diarrhea. The Navy later confirmed that one of its drinking water wells was contaminated with jet fuel, which is believed to have come from its Red Hill fuel facility. Since then, several thousand military families and an unknown number of non-military residents have been displaced from their homes as the Navy works to clean its pipes and ensure that the water is safe to drink. State health officials have said that the health effects from the water contamination should subside quickly after discontinuing use, but have also cautioned that long-term effects are not fully understood. Long-term chronic exposure is believed to pose a much greater health risk. The current contamination emergency is believed to have been acute. Bronster told reporters that the firms have about 14 claimants. However, the firms only provided the Honolulu Star Advisor with one of the claims, which was filed on Wednesday. I'm not even going to try the name. I'll butcher it. A civilian resident is seeking $1 million for personal injury claims and $39,160 for property damage. She says that her family began detecting a petroleum smell in their water and that she experienced skin rashes, lesions, and itching. Additional claims are being filed on behalf of 4 other family members, according to a spokesman for the law firms, who said that the family is seeking $5 million total. Not I'm gonna butcher it. Claim says that as civilians, they were not provided with alternative housing until the second week of December. Just Well Law, a firm based in Texas, is also soliciting clients and held a meeting on Saturday in Waikiki to discuss legal actions against the Navy. So we're starting to see legal actions and lawsuits pop up, which is great. I hope that they all sue the Navy to hell and back. This is terrible. And, they're saying that if you didn't have long-term exposure, it's fine. I doubt that, especially children, infants who are been exposed to this water. I can't imagine what that does to a growing child. Do you know what I mean? And they don't really know the long-term effects. So
any ingestion of water that's contaminated with jet fuel, whether it's long-term or short-term, is almost certainly going to cause health problems, whether those are short-term or long-term health problems. And that they're willing to try to dance around or lighten that fact is despicable. And while they claim to want to keep this facility open for financial reasons, they have no problem wasting billions in taxpayer dollars on so-called war games with Russia and China.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, we always got money for war, but we can't even get people clean drinking water. This country is a disaster. So, we're going to keep an eye on that. The story is obviously still developing. It's going to be going on for a very long time. So we'll keep an eye on it. And if there's any new developments or updates, we'll definitely let you guys know. Keep an eye on it for yourselves as well. It's hard to find information on it. Nobody's covering it. There's no mention of this in mainstream press at all. You have to, all of the stuff that I've been able to find is local Hawaiian media. So definitely try to keep an eye on it. If you guys find information, send it to me because I would like to keep an eye on it.
Still hasn't said anything, correct?
No, she has.
Has she?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, when we covered it last time, she's been to the meetings when she was in office. She has gone to the meetings and listened to the people speak, all of that stuff. She's been fairly. I mean, I have my issues with Tulsi Gabbard, but she has been pretty good on this.
Yeah.
So we're definitely going to keep an eye on it. It's going to be developing for quite some time. So there we go. And then moving on, I wanted to talk to you guys about the Tonga eruption, the volcano eruption, because it has had some interesting fallout for Peru. So let's go with... Okay, so Spanish corporation Repsol has spilt 6,000 barrels of oil into the sea after their refinery near the Peruvian coast was hit by the recent tsunami, which was the impact of the volcano. The Peruvian government
Underwater
has...
volcano, correct?
I'm sorry, what?
That was an underwater volcano that erupted?
I don't think so. Was it? I don't think so.
Anyway, a volcano did erupt to cause...
Yeah, and the eruption was so extreme you could see it from space, which is kind of impressive, also terrifying. But the Peruvian government has now declared this its worst ecological disaster in recent times. As you can see here in the photos, it's horrific. That's a lot of oil. So Peru has really been hit hard by this. I have a couple of other different sources that we can pull up to discuss this. DW News did some great coverage of this. So they have a video which I can share with you guys. It's pretty brief. Share audio. Okay. Sorry. I always want to make sure I hit share audio because I'm so paranoid about forgetting. Okay. So...
Lo que queremos que reconozca pues, los daños que han cometido ellos, nuestro fuente de trabajo, o sea, que nos tienen que... ajá.
Esto es un grave atentado contra la biodiversidad, contra la ecología, contra nuestro litoral, nuestras playas. La verdad que es un desastre ecológico.
Okay, so as you guys can see, the country of Peru, particularly the fishing community, has been devastated. The wildlife there has been devastated. This is going to be something that is going to take quite some time to clean up, and it's going to have really far-reaching implications for the whole region, really. But, you know, I love that they were like, we don't have any responsibility because we didn't get a tsunami warning. Would it have mattered? Would they have been able to prevent it had they gotten a tsunami warning? I don't know. I would like to know the answer to that question.
I find that hard to believe because
yeah.
when that eruption occurred, I was getting alerts on my phone about a tsunami. So that little old me was getting alerts here in New Jersey, and this company with, I assume, way more technological capabilities than I have didn't get any warning. Especially being situated on the Pacific coast, I find hard to believe, to say the least.
Yes. And I think you were right. It was underwater. So I was going to share this article as well. It kind of gives us a little bit of the science behind what was happening there, which honestly they don't know. So a volcanologist explains what we know about this once in a lifetime eruption. So the eruption of the submarine Hunga Tonga, I'm not going to try it, volcano on Saturday, 15 January 2022 has left thousands of people without homes, supplies, and internet. On Tuesday, 18 of January, the Tongan government confirmed the eruption had resulted in 3 deaths, 2 of which were local people and 1 British national. As of Thursday, 20 January, it would seem that the volcano's activity has stopped at the surface. The volcanologists cannot say what is happening under the water. The volcano's explosion sent shockwaves as far as Alaska and the UK, and caused a tsunami that affected the shores of Australia, the US, and Russia, and obviously Peru. And it's been reported that 2 people have died in Peru due to flooding caused by the tsunami. The volcano is said to have been responsible for nearly 400,000 lightning events in the hours following the explosion on Saturday, according to meteorologist Chris Vagaski. Around 10 hours after the eruption, people in Miami, USA, over 7,000 miles away from the volcano, saw pressure waves at speeds of 695 miles per hour, acoustic ripples in the air, which, according to atmospheric scientist Brian McNulty on Twitter, were essentially traveling at the speed of sound through the atmosphere. The shockwaves continue to travel around the globe and were still being recorded on Tuesday, 18 of January. Seismology student Felix Eckel said readings made it, quote, clearly visible that the wave has circled the planet twice at this time, end quote. The volcano's activity has dropped since the eruption. However, it continues to release gases into the atmosphere. These include sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide, which volcanologist Shane Cronin told Reuters news agency could interact with water and oxygen in the air to create acid rain over Tonga. That sounds like a lot of fun. Additionally, the amount of ash released at the time of the eruption could impact local waters, causing marine life to die or migrate to cleaner waters and impacting the Tongan fishing industry. As a submarine volcano, the Hunga Tonga, is less studied than land volcanoes. This made it difficult to predict how big the eruption would be when volcanologists noticed activity in the area 2 days before the event, said Dr. Samuel Mitchell. Mitchell, a volcanologist at the University of Bristol, specializes in submarine volcanoes. He has worked on several volcanoes around, though not including the Hunga Tonga volcano, and spoke to BBC Science Focus about the recent disaster. And why couldn't they predict it? This is kind of a longer article, so I mean, I'll put this in the chat for you guys if you want to check it out. I'm kind of a nerd about this stuff. I like learning about how this stuff works and why they are able to predict some and not others and all of this stuff. But I think really I mean, if you can see here, this is from space. You can see this badass thing from space. I mean, it was a big eruption. This is no joke. It's going to have significant impact on the area, on the region for a very long time. I mean, this is something that, just Peru alone, that's going to take who knows how long to clean up. So, this is the marine life. It's going to impact the marine life in the area. Like they said, that there could be migration. It's going to impact the fishing communities, which these are big fishing areas. So this is going to devastate their economies. So yeah, this is definitely something that we're going to want to keep an eye on. And this is, if you see here, this is one of the Tongan islands. It's covered in ash. So that's going to impact, the air that they breathe, their farming, everything. This is, a massive disaster. There's another picture of it from space. This is a satellite image. It's crazy. Fascinating, but scary.
Evidence as well that not all of what contributes to major climate change is anthropogenic in origin, despite what the COP26 Extinction Rebellion crowd likes to shout at us.
Right.
So the Earth does indeed undergo massive changes, which massively affect human environments. And it's not just our mere existence and breathing that contributes to that, if at all.
Yeah. Bad stuff, guys. I'll keep an eye on this and see if it develops I would like to keep an eye on that lawsuit in particular to see if that company will be held responsible at all. I doubt it, but they should be. And we need to start focusing on how we can move away from oil as much as possible. And I know that's not going to be like an overnight thing, but we need to start, coming up with better ideas. Come on, y'all. If we can figure out how to do some of the things that we can do, surely we can find alternative sources of energy that, won't kill a whole bunch of wildlife and devastate communities for decades. I think we could at least try.
Right. There's a lot to be derived from alternative sources of energy, but the call to immediately switch to it, even by 2050, is totally unrealistic. The infrastructure is not in place. The raw materials are not immediately accessible. So to immediately flip the switch, like people such as Chris Hedges, for example, constantly claim we need to do, is totally unrealistic. But that is not to deny that we should seek out and practically implement alternative energy sources.
Yes. I think that they don't even, maybe Chris Hedges means it, but I think that politicians don't really mean, when they say by 2050, that's just election garbage. It's just, pandering to people who care about the environment, and they're not actually going to do it. I mean, Joe Biden said, he was going to be concerned about the environment, and then he auctioned off the Gulf Coast for drilling. So, we do need to take a realistic approach to this. It is something that we need to start working towards, and putting actual effort and energy into figuring out ways that we can move past oil, and start implementing those changes as we can. It's not going to be easy, but obviously we don't want things like this happening. And I think that, we're smart enough as a species that we can start moving away from this kind of stuff, so that we don't have to worry about a tsunami causing this much damage to, a country like Peru. It's just something that we need to just keep an eye on and be realistic about. Like Jesse said, we got to be realistic. We can't expect this to be a quick switch. It's not going to be. We've been heavily dependent on fossil fuels for a very long time. And that's going to be, kind of a slow, painfully slow transition, but we can do it, and we should do it. And that's for no other reason, just that I don't even care like what you think about climate change necessarily. Taking care of the planet just is smart. You know what I mean? Like, so that we don't have a whole, like, thousands of wildlife, being covered in oil. Those kinds of things are important. We should do it. It's not something that we can't do. So, I mean, it just makes sense. It's just commonsensical. So I'll keep an eye on this, keep an eye on Peru, keep an eye on that lawsuit, and I'll let you guys know if there's any updates. But yeah, it's not looking good for Peru right now. They're going to be struggling for a while from this.
I would just add that there are some very good scientists and engineers, particularly in Europe, who are working on a transition from the traditional energy resources we have now to renewables, more sustainable resources, but they're doing a very good job of looking at how to make that transition practically, considering the infrastructure that's in place, the resources that are in place, and how what we use now needs to be phased out appropriately, and what we want needs to be phased in appropriately. So there is a way, or there are ways on the table being posited as to how to do this, but it can't be that we flip a switch one day and suddenly move to green economies like those in COP26 say we should do. And as anybody who's listened to our interview with Ian Davis from earlier this week would know, for those people driving the COP26 climate crisis agenda, they don't care about the environment outside of financializing it, turning it into another market. That's what it's about for them. It's not about the welfare of the planet or ecosystems.
No, but it should be about that for us. So Fuck them. We need to start focusing on us, because they're not going to help us. Like, we have to have each other. So yeah. Okay. That's all I got for you guys. So Jesse, you want to move on to
Sure.
COVID mania?
If you can bring up the first piece, I would go to the archive.ph link, because the Wall Street Journal link itself.
Your first one was a Bloomberg.
Oh, that's right. Sorry about that.
I was like, what are you talking about, dude?
Let me find that on my end. Okay. Just a moment.
I can send it to you. Do you need me to send it to you?
I got it. I just don't know
drop
where
it in the
went
chat
on my end. Okay.
I can drop it in the private chat if you need me to.
I've got it right here.
Okay.
So this is from Bloomberg Law. This was published earlier today. Biden's shot mandate for federal workers blocked nationwide. So this is separate from the OSHA mandate. This was the one that Biden imposed upon federal workers late last year, I believe it was. And a district judge just put a stay on that. So I'll read through this piece, which also points out that the DOJ immediately now is threatening to appeal this stay. So the Justice Department will appeal a federal judge's nationwide preliminary injunction against President Joe Biden's executive order mandating that all federal workers consent to be vaccinated against COVID-19 or else face termination, which is an interesting choice of language. Consent to be vaccinated. Mandate that they consent to be vaccinated. The order poses a substantial threat of irreparable harm to the, quote, liberty interests of employees who must choose between violating a mandate of doubtful validity or consenting to an unwanted medical procedure that cannot be undone, unquote, Judge Jeffrey V. Brown of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Texas said. There's also a strong likelihood that the plaintiffs who represent federal workers will prevail in challenging the order, Brown said. A DOJ spokesman tweeted later Friday that the department, quote, is filing a notice of appeal, unquote. The order, which was issued September 9, likely exceeds the president's constitutional and statutory authority in light of the U.S. Supreme Court's January 13 decision on the Occupational Safety and Health Administration's vaccine rule, Brown said. The Supreme Court held that COVID-19 vaccine mandates are not employment regulations, reasoning that the virus is, quote, a universal risk, unquote, not a workplace one, in determining that OSHA lacked the authority to require workers to get vaccinated, Brown said. Applying this reasoning to the president, then, means that even though he has the power to regulate the workplace conduct of federal employees under certain statutes, he still can't force them to get vaccinated as a condition of employment, Brown said. Quote, this case is not about whether folks should get vaccinated against COVID-19. The court believes they should, unquote, Brown noted. But the president's order, which took effect without any congressional input, is, quote, a bridge too far, unquote, he said. While the government has, quote, an undeniable, unquote, public health interest in preventing the spread of COVID-19, it hasn't adequately shown that blocking this particular vaccine mandate will have, quote, a serious detrimental effect, unquote, on this goal, Brown said. Quote, an overwhelming majority, unquote, of federal employees are already vaccinated, and there are less restrictive ways to further the public interest, like masking and social distancing, Brown noted. Brown also rejected the government's assertions that the court lacked jurisdiction to hear the matter because the plaintiffs' claims are barred by the Civil Service Reform Act and not ripe for review. Boyd and Gray and Associates, PLLC, represents the plaintiffs. The U.S. Attorney's Office represents the government. The case is Feds for Medical Freedom et al. V. Biden, Southern District of Texas, number 321-CV-00356, 12122. So this is a story that is ongoing, still developing, but what we can see here is that right now the federal mandate on federal workers having to be injected if they want to work for the government, it has been given a temporary stay by this Texas district judge. And it's notable that almost immediately the DOJ fired back that it's going to appeal. What's also notable here too is the language of the judge. And I don't know if he's speaking this way because he wants to insulate himself from criticism or persecution. But notable is that he says the court believes that folks should get vaccinated against COVID-19 and that he believes masking and social distancing are less restrictive ways to further the public interest. Now, the first point completely ignores the fact that these injections do not work and indeed are harmful to almost everybody who takes them. Probably in the future, we will see everybody who takes them or is forced to take them. And the claim about masking and social distancing is also devoid of any factual context. We know that masking is extremely harmful to children in a wide array of ways. It's also psychologically and physically harmful to adults. And social distancing, one can speculate that that includes lockdowns as well, which the data now is unequivocal that lockdowns are nothing but harmful, especially when they're mandated for everybody and not just the sick. So this echoes the Supreme Court's arguments or decision put forth last week, which was also completely devoid of fact. Dr. Toby Rogers, whose Substack I recommend people check out. Let me just make sure. Yep, Toby Rogers is his name. He recently wrote a good piece on how the Supreme Court's decision, and as we can see, also this decision, bend over backward to avoid getting into the facts about the injections and mask mandates with regard to how harmful and how unsuccessful, for lack of a better word, they are. So again, this is an ongoing story. It is good that a stay has been put upon these violations of people's inalienable rights to bodily sovereignty and making up their own minds with regard to being subject to a medical procedure. But it's also dismaying, to say the least, that it's gotten this far that we have to rely on federal courts and the Supreme Court, who are, as I've said, not willing to engage with facts in their decisions. It's dismaying that it's gotten this far. If we look at Unesco's, I won't pull this up, but I'll reference it. If we look at Unesco's Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, it makes it unequivocally clear that not only is it an individual right to decide whether or not to be subject to any medical procedure, experimental or otherwise, but that in all cases of such procedures, the individual sovereignty outweighs that of the collective, outweighs that of any benefit that might be provided to the collective good. So to everybody out there who keeps whining about how people need to submit to an injection of an experimental genetically modified substance into their bodies to protect the public, your case is falling more and more flat each day. And you should be put on notice that you are standing in contravention to fundamental human rights encoded in essentially international law. So moving on from there, the Wall Street Journal published a piece today with regard to the CDC doubling down on its pushing of injections. This is a long piece, so I won't read through all of it, but I'll just hit on the point that, as the headline stipulates, third dose of Pfizer, Moderna, COVID-19 vaccines offers strong protection against Omicron. CDC analysis shows that boosters are important in maximizing protection against Omicron and Delta variants. The first paragraph here states, Vaccines and booster shots are the best protection from the Delta and Omicron variants, according to 3 new studies released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. So we'll drop the link in the chat so you can
Already
read
did.
this. Okay, so you can read this piece for yourself. It's on archive.ph because otherwise you'll have to deal with the paywall. But the point here, one of the points here being that the CDC is doubling down on pushing these injections on the public, even though, as this article goes on to admit, that Omicron is waning. You can see right there in the caption of the photo of the woman in her mask in front of, I believe that's at the Louvre. The Omicron wave is receding in Paris, but still we have to submit to these injections because why? Well, lots of reasons, which we've gone over in previous episodes and previous shows. But as these injections continue to be pushed, I want to go to this piece that Alex Berenson published on his Substack at the beginning of this month, which I think is very relevant with regard to pushing back against this continued narrative that our best protection against Omicron, which is nothing more than the common cold, that our best protection against that is these injections, which do not work and are extremely harmful, even deadly. So I want to read through this whole piece because there are a lot of good points made here, and he provides some data to back up what I'm saying. So it's titled, Has COVID Vaccine Efficacy Turned Negative? Data from highly vaccinated countries suggests strongly that the answer is yes. Vaccinated people are at higher risk of infection from Omicron. Denmark has fewer than 6 million people, 1/60th as many as the United States. Nearly nearly all its adults are vaccinated, mostly with the Pfizer mRNA vaccine that is the world's supposed gold standard. Half have received third, quote, booster, unquote, doses. On Wednesday, Denmark reported, and keep in mind this was early January, January 6th. On Wednesday, Denmark reported 28,000 COVID infections, equal to about 1.7 million in the United States. The figures are similar in the United Kingdom and all over Western Europe. Many countries are at 90% adult COVID vaccination levels, with boosters soaring. And they are all now in the midst of an epidemic of COVID contagion that dwarfs any that has come before. The vaccines sure seem to have failed. That's wrong, though. The reality is worse. The data from several countries now show clearly that infection rates are higher in vaccinated people. Iceland has 91% vaccination rate and an over 50% booster rate in its population over 12. This is its chart of cases per capita by vaccination status, not absolute, per capita. Dark blue is fully vaccinated, light blue is unvaccinated, black is boosted. Look at what has happened to the dark blue line since December 21, since Omicron became dominant. So if we take a look at this data from Iceland and we look at the dark blue line, we can see that the cases are skyrocketing. And keep in mind that the dates at the bottom are in European form. So when you see all the way to the right, 5/1/22, that's actually January 5th, 2022. Again, this article being from early January. But you can see the cases of Omicron skyrocketing well over those of the unvaccinated and those who have been injected twice and those who have been injected once. So going down and continuing, and there's a link to the source. We'll drop the link for this piece if we haven't already into the chat for Alex Berensing's piece. And then you can check out these links that he lists on your own. Going on, he writes, we already know vaccine protection against earlier variants of SARS-CoV-2 falls sharply within months of the second dose as the vaccine-generated antibodies fade. But the new data go a step further, showing that previously vaccinated people are actually more likely to contract Omicron. The government of Ontario has reported exactly the same pattern. So have Danish researchers in a paper 2 weeks ago when they found protection against Omicron turned negative 3 months after the second dose. So pausing here briefly to look at this graphic he provides, which he links to the study below it. It shows that for both the Pfizer and Moderna injections, 91 to 150 days since being doubly injected, that protection becomes negative, as you can see, 0 being the baseline, and then underneath that being negative vaccine effectiveness. And in the case of the Pfizer injection, it's somewhere around negative 75%. And in the case of the Moderna injection, I believe that translates to somewhere around negative 35%. And what that means with negative vaccine effectiveness is that it's beginning to harm your immune system and therefore make your immune system more vulnerable, not just to Omicron, but ostensibly any other viruses that are circulating out there or that may already be present but previously dormant in your body. So evidence here very clear coming out of Denmark and Iceland that these injections not only are not working, but they are harming the immune system. Going on, the vaccine fanatics have said that boosters are the answer against Omicron, that people who receive a third dose will regain protection. This, at best, is a highly optimistic view. Remember the Happy Vaccine Valley? During the 2021 mass vaccination campaigns, COVID infections, whether Delta or the original strain, fell close to 0 in the 4 months after the second dose as antibodies peaked. The Happy Vaccine Valley no longer exists. Boosters begin to fail essentially immediately against Omicron, despite the massive and potentially dangerous increase in anti-spike protein antibodies they produce. Here's the most recent report on vaccine protection from the United Kingdom from last week. Again, this is from early January. So this would be from late December, this report. The black boxes represent protection against the Delta variant, which is overstated because of the healthy vaccine user bias, but put that fact aside. As you can see, peak protection against Delta starts around 90% 2 weeks after the second dose. It remains at 60% 6 months out. A third dose pushes it back to 90%, and it barely budges for the first 10 weeks. But what's true for Delta is not true for Omicron. Even at their absolute peak, 2 doses of mRNA vaccines offer only 60% protection against Omicron. Within 4 months, protection has fallen almost to 0. A booster returns protection to 70%, but 2 months later, it has fallen to about 50%. And we see here the graph of the data he was referencing. We can see the decline there from after dose 2 and also from after the booster. And there's also the link below that to the UK data. And the UK, I have to say, although its information is certainly incomplete and manipulated, is much better than what the CDC here has been providing. So it does give us an insight of sorts into how unsuccessful and damaging these injections are. Continuing on, that's a decline to 50% protection from Omicron at most because the unseen confounders will tend to overstate vaccine efficacy within 10 weeks of a third dose. We have every reason to expect it too will plunge to zero within a few more weeks. What then? A fourth dose? A fifth a few weeks after that? How much mRNA do the public health authorities intend to cram in us? And what about the real terror, antibody dependent enhancement? Are the vaccines only driving infection with Omicron, or are they increasing the risk of serious illness too? We don't really know yet, in part because Omicron is milder across the board. In addition, the wave of cases has hit so fast that it will take time for serious illness to catch up. Finally, the problem of incidental hospitalizations with, not from COVID, is worse and will further muddy the data. That said, hospitalizations of vaccinated people with Omicron are rising very fast, and the gap between vaccinated and unvaccinated people is shrinking. The Danish government reported on January 3 that only 24% of the people hospitalized with Omicron during late November and December were unvaccinated, while 76% were vaccinated, including 18% who were boosted. During the same period, unvaccinated people made up 45% of those hospitalized with earlier variants. Yet more proof the vaccines simply do not work as well against Omicron as earlier variants. And here is a chart of statistics from Denmark. And if you look at the numbers, you can see that the uninjected 641 cases of other variants and 109 cases of Omicron. And then you have to take the numbers below that, you have to take them together. Received first dose, completed primary vaccination schedule, meaning 2 doses, revaccinated, meaning the so-called booster, because these are all people who are injected to some degree. And it's been intentionally rolled out so that you're not considered fully vaccinated until 14 days after receiving the second injection. Never in history with any vaccination, real vaccination, has that been done before. This is the first time in human history and medical history. So we have to take those numbers together. Now, if we take all of those numbers underneath the not vaccinated category together, whether it's with other variants or Omicron, they by far add up to a much larger number than the so-called not vaccinated. And again, more evidence from yet another country that these injections do not work. And we know by now, yet we should keep saying it, that they not only do not confer immunity and therefore are not genuine vaccines, but they don't prevent transmission or the catching of the virus. So there's a link there, again, that you can check out for yourself. And Alex goes on to write, by the way, I have to rely on data from other countries because the United States figures are untrustworthy. American hospitals are in the habit of reporting every COVID patient for whom they do not have complete 2 or 3 dose data as unvaccinated, which is the point I just made. Finishing up he goes on to write, why are we encouraging people to get, quote, vaccinated, unquote, or, quote, boosted, unquote, with a, quote, vaccine, unquote, that within a few weeks probably increases their risk of becoming infected with the newly dominant variant of SARS-CoV-2? We were lucky with Omicron. It is apparently quite mild, but we are now in a world where SARS-CoV-2 cannot be contained and where it will continue to mutate in both humans and animals in ways we cannot predict. Some scientists believe that Omicron underwent most of its mutations in mice before jumping back to humans. Now, that is a speculation of some scientists. Others have heard that and described it as far-fetched and have posited that this mutation has either occurred in humans because of the injections or possibly is something that was concocted in a lab, as was the original strain. That's all up in the air and unknown, and only the subject of speculation at this point. So he goes on to write, nor do we yet know whether and how vaccines will interfere with the development of immunity after SARS-CoV-2 infection and recovery. Will they prevent our immune systems from developing antibodies to other parts of the coronavirus or interfere with B and T cell maturation? All we really know is that the vaccines don't prevent infection for very long, and for many healthy people have side effects that are significantly worse than coronavirus infection. But those facts were true before Omicron. Both are doubly true now. Yet the drive to vaccinate and boost continues. Why? Very good question. And if you've been following our work here at Facts on the Ground, we've been trying to answer that question. I think we went a long way toward answering that question in our interview with Ian Davis earlier this week. So please check that out if you haven't. And going on from here to pick up the thread, I want to play a clip from an interview I watched yesterday with Dr. Brian Ardis. He's been a guest on Ryan Christian's show, The Last American Vagabond. And Dr. Brian Ardis's father-in-law was hospitalized for COVID-19 and given remdesivir, intubated, and killed by that euthanasia program. So since then, he's been very outspoken, not just against the use of remdesivir for COVID-19 patients, but also the harmfulness, to put it lightly, of these injections. And he reveals something in this clip we're going to play that starts at 1 hour, 24 minutes, and 22 seconds that I did not know until yesterday, and is pretty damning evidence of intent on the part of not just the corporations who are manufacturing these injections, but also the FDA, and you could add to that the CDC. So are you able to bring up that video and play it from that point? I can't hear you. You're muted.
Oh, it should be up. Is it up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you able to play it?
It's on the screen. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Is October 22nd, 2020. And there's a division of the FDA called the CBER. It's the Center for Biologics, Experiments, and Research. Their job is to oversee vaccines for the FDA. And the CBER decided to have an internal meeting with all the heads of the FDA in October 2020, which is 2 months before the COVID-19 shots came out. This whole meeting is to discuss vaccine safety and monitoring for the coming COVID-19 shots. So the CBER division head decides to hold a meeting and provides a 25-slide presentation to the heads of the FDA.
Is this released publicly or no?
It was on FDA.gov's website up until about 3 months ago when they took it down.
Wow.
But I have it.
Okay.
So I have been pumping it out to all Americans since October 2020 to make sure that everybody knows what the FDA knew were going to be coming serious adverse events from the shots.
Good.
So I'm reading through this entire 25 slide presentation, and they're determining things like this. What database we're going to select to review and do what's called rapid cycle analysis. And they decided they're going to do a rapid cycle analysis of all reported side effects coming into the government agencies like VARS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. These are the places that doctors and patients are going to be reporting all their serious adverse events to the coming COVID-19 shots. And the CBER is telling the FDA, these are the database options to review. We're going to do a 7-day rapid cycle analysis. Every 7 days, we're going to look at all the injuries being reported, and we're going to determine which vaccines are safest, which ones are not. In this report on slide 15, they highlight that they have selected the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services data. That's what they're going to use to do rapid cycle analysis on. And then they get to slide 16. And slide 16, as the world calls it now, the infamous slide 16, because I've continually projected this on TV screens and monitors around the world, they actually published 22 bullet-pointed serious adverse events to the FDA that they knew were going to start being reported in December when they launched these COVID-19 shots. Those 22 bullet points include deaths, miscarriages, and over 110 different diseases that they knew would be caused by the shots.
Wow.
One was acute demyelinating diseases. Can you name one of those?
Yeah, ALS.
Multiple sclerosis, right?
Yeah.
They know this is going to be a side effect of the shot, so they know there's going to be neurological issues. They also list 5 blood clot disorders. Out of the 22 bullet points, 5 of them are blood clot disorders that they know are going to be coming from the shots.
So they listed on the slide 22. Were they potential adverse events or things they knew about from the studies?
These are the possible serious adverse events to be expected to be reported, is what the slide's titled.
Okay, to be expected to be reported. So they had an expectation that people are going to report this.
Oh, yeah. Number 1 on the list.
Yeah.
I was surprised it wasn't deaths. Deaths is number 13.
Are they in order of frequency?
You would think so.
Yeah. Good.
Or I would say I would have put them in the order of severity.
Death would be number 1 if it was
I
severity.
think death should be number 1.
Yeah. Okay.
Why you put it at 13 and the miscarriages at 14? I don't know.
Okay.
But number 1 is Guillain-Barre Syndrome.
Mm.
And so I've been announcing this to the world. If you don't know what Guillain-Barre Syndrome is, just think about polio.
Yeah.
You have paralyzed limbs, paralyzed arms, half of your faces. It looks like Bell's palsy. But only 60% of these people recover from physical therapy intense for a year.
Wow.
40% of all people that get this Guillain-Barre Syndrome, paralyzed parts of their body, 40% of them have that for the rest of their life. They have myocardial infarction, which is a side effect of blood clots, and that's a heart attack. They also list myocarditis in October, and you've seen thousands of teenagers now being diagnosed with myocarditis. Now, not in the mass media do you see it, but now the FDA has made each of those 3 suppliers of vaccines put a black box warning on the inserts with the shots in the last month or 2 that say, black box warning, myocarditis is a rare side effect of these shots. They actually knew that that was a side effect before the shots ever came out.
So why are they only black boxing it now then, do you think?
Oh, because now you've got so many people reporting it to the media, and then you got groups like Children's Health Defense that are reporting it out to millions of people around the world. Every Friday they report on all of the updated VAERS data.
Right.
And myocarditis is a huge one. It's actually causing a lot of teenagers to experience inflammation of the heart, and some of them are dying.
Yeah.
So there's reports of deaths from these. Well, it's interesting to me too.
So we can see from there that they knew beforehand what was going to happen with these injections and did not care and rolled them out anyway. And hence what we're seeing now more and more on a daily basis. We're seeing it in children, we're seeing it in athletes, we're seeing it in elderly people. And you can see very much, I think, from this that there was, if not outright intent to do harm, murderous negligence in the decisions they made. And keep in mind that these injections have now been rolled out to children and are about to be rolled out to infants, I would say 6-month-olds And it's utter insanity, it's utter criminality. And I encourage everybody to watch that full episode. Dr. Artis goes on to make a lot more damning revelations that I wish we could play, but for the sake of time, um, we'll hold off on. And please
I'll
check them
drop it
out.
in the chat.
Please check that out for yourself. That was recorded back in September of last year, but the information, as ever, remains as relevant and as damning as ever. And I was shocked when I heard that. And he goes on to say, goes on to reveal some information that's arguably much more shocking. And it's all based on documents that are in the public domain that he's been able to get his hands on, based on Pfizer's own documents. And the first part of that video is an interview with Dr. Lee Merritt, who's done some excellent work on revealing SARS-CoV-2 as a bioweapon. And I encourage everybody to listen to what she has to say and the evidence she presents and to make up their own minds regarding that. But it's pretty compelling evidence that not only was SARS-CoV-2 created in a lab, as I think we all know now, but it was created as part of bioweapons development by both the US and China working in concert. And it was released from that lab, whether intentionally or accidentally, we don't know. We can only speculate. But she lays out a very strong case for the bioweaponry aspect of this virus. And she's not the only one. Dr. Merrill Nass has also been very good at this and linking SARS-CoV-2 back to the days of the anthrax scare, and even before that, the days of the anthrax injections for military personnel, which resulted in what we now know of as Gulf War syndrome. And Merrill Nass, it should be noted, is Dr. Malone's personal doctor, if I'm not mistaken. And she just had her medical license revoked because of the speaking out she's been doing against this COVID-19 madness. But she has a lot of work available online to both read and view, and I highly recommend checking it out. Whitney Webb has done some excellent interviews with her at Unlimited Hangout, so check those out. And once again, I'll remind people of the Corona Committee that's been doing a lot of good work in Germany for quite some time now. We covered them last week. They have been putting together a case to charge particular individuals, including Bill Gates, including Tedros from the WHO, and several others for crimes against humanity. And this that we just played was presented to them and is part of the body of evidence that they're compiling to bring this case against these individuals who are responsible for crimes against humanity, crimes against us, crimes against humanity on an international scale. So do check out that information and realize that this is not incompetence or accidental negligence that's going on here. There is an intent to harm, and we must always remember that with all of the information and propaganda that's pumped out to us on a daily basis to keep us afraid and keep us complying. Now, to finish up on the subject of complying, I want to read this piece published by Mark Mcdonald, who is a clinical psychiatrist based in West Los Angeles. He is the author of an excellent new book, which I highly recommend, called United States of Fear: How America Fell Victim to a Mass Delusional Psychosis. And he has a fairly new Substack on which he's been publishing some very good pieces from a psychological, psychiatric point of view. He likes to call it where politics and medicine meet. Um, and this is a piece he published today called Dependency, the End Goal of the Universal Vaccine Campaign. And there are some things I don't fully agree with that he posits in here and elsewhere, but the overall point is a very sound one and one that we should all take to heart moving forward in our resistance. So I'll read this to wrap up. Dr. Richard Urso recently asked the rhetorical question, considering the never-ending march to 100%, quote, vaccination, unquote, of the entire American population. Quote, is there anyone who should not be vaccinated, unquote? According to our government, the answer is, of course, no. The reason why may surprise you. The vaccine campaign is simply part of a much larger effort to ensure the dependency of every American on government and the media and corporations it serves. Now, that's a little clunky and maybe miswritten there as far as the government and the media and the corporations it serves. But I think you get the point. It is irrefutable and undisputed that the shots neither confer immunity nor protect against either infection or transmission of disease. Growing evidence reveals that these drugs significantly, by a factor of 2, increase one's likelihood of becoming sick. All-cause mortality for those who have been injected is between 20% and 100% higher compared with the non-injected population in several European nations. Due to intentionally sloppy and misleading data collection here in the United States, we simply do not know to what degree the, quote, vaccines, unquote, are increasing death rates for a disease that is now, simply put, no more dangerous than the common cold. Clearly, these drugs are not being coerced and forced upon Americans to benefit their health. So why do they continue to be distributed at all? Government, media, and large corporations have colluded to attack every element of American life that preserves independence. And this is where I take issue with his listing of some of the elements of American life that preserve independence, such as, and I'll list them before I read them, the police, for example, and also his assertion about male and female being the only genders in existence. But looking over that, again, I think his overall point is very salient. The drugs serve as the latest weapon in a much larger war being fought against male and female, the authority of the parent, marriage, local community, civic organizations, the church, police, gun ownership, education, private transport, and energy. What do all these things have in common? They protect the independence of the American citizen. Again, arguable at best. Once they are destroyed or seized, the people have only government and its sponsors to rely on for their survival. Radio show host Dennis Prager has said that human beings do not naturally yearn to be free, but rather to be taken care of. Our government has taken advantage of that universal human weakness by offering the promise of a life-saving drug to protect against a disease that threatens every living American. This offer, however dishonest, appeals to our instinct to be protected from harm, to be taken care of. It requires a conscious, thoughtful decision to reject this seductive proposal. Most Americans cannot do this today. The recent United States Supreme Court decision allowing hospitals to require healthcare workers to be injected if the hospital accepted federal funding is the most recent example of the many Faustian bargains recently made between government and industry, with the ultimate victims being the employees of these institutions. Essentially, what this decision says is government owns you. Accepting Medicare and Medicaid comes with a price. Your right to determine what drugs enter your body. From a psychological point of view, the state has begun to rapidly move toward the total usurpation of the role of the father. Fewer and fewer Americans today have had the experience of receiving the protection and care of a real father. Close to half of all Hispanic children and more than half of all Black children in the United States are born to single mothers. Even among educated, financially stable, urban white households with two parents, many fathers are simply absent, abandoning their fathering responsibilities to their wives. For a variety of reasons, a growing number of Americans have come to accept government as a surrogate father, even when that father abuses them. Are the injections meant to depopulate our nation, to create a national tracking database, to fill our blood with radio transmitters? The answer may be something much simpler, yet far worse: to ensure a population of dependent, passive, disempowered workers living under the thumb of a government that cares nothing for their well-being. The medical battle was won a long time ago. We are now in a larger war between tyranny and the very survival of our independence as Americans. And I would extend that battle or that war to all human beings around the world, not just Americans, but he's obviously speaking about the United States in this context. So I think he makes a very good case there that a lot of people have become dependent on the government, although I would say they've become submissive to the government because the stage was primed beforehand with fear, with the propaganda of fear and the need to comply to assuage that fear. And then that kept going, and the government said, well, we have the answer to not just mitigating your fear, but giving you your freedom back, as if they ever had a right to take it away, with these injections, which, as we just covered, not only don't work, but are harming and killing people on a large scale. So I think that's a good place to wrap up. And one final point I'll make with regard to this piece and with regard to everything I've covered and that Misty's covered today is that we have to keep resisting and standing up against these various powers, which are all working together to some extent to totally control us, totally control our lives, and to keep their power going for as long as they can. I don't know what their end game is. We've tried to speculate on numerous shows, and we're going to keep trying to speculate and probe that. But resistance is the key, non-compliance is the key, and fighting for your individual sovereignty and bodily autonomy is the key. Don't give in.
Yes, and I just also want to mention that WikiLeaks is still taking submissions. So if you're out there and you see something, leak something. I'm going to drop the submission link in the chats. They're still fighting the fight to save Julian Assange's life, but we need whistleblowers more now than ever. We need truth tellers more now than ever. I say this all the time, but imagine what we would know if Julian Assange was free. So, again, it's Free Assange Friday. So please make some noise this weekend. We have a big court date on Monday. So please do that. And just so everybody knows, tonight we are having a Free Assange vigil. It starts at 9 p.m. Eastern, and our guest is going to be Tara Reid, which should be an amazing conversation. I love her to death. She's one of my favorite people. So I'm really excited to talk to her. I consider her to be a whistleblower as well. So I know that she'll have a lot to offer the conversation, and we will jump more into what the court case, what the court date on Monday means. So make sure you don't miss that. Do you have anything else? I don't think I have anything else.
That's all I've got for this week.
Okay.
So I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Again,
Yes.
You're just as much a part of this show as we are. And I've noticed that a lot of people have been messaging us at our Twitter page, which we haven't kept up to date with. We haven't updated
We're
in a
both
long
really
time,
bad at it.
but this weekend I am going to get back to getting that on track and looking at the messages that have come in. A lot of people have been sharing helpful links, which I have been able to check out outside of the Twitter account, recommendations for stories to cover. And I very much appreciate that. We both very much appreciate that. And please keep them coming. Because again, you're just as much a part of this show as we are. And we need all the help we can get for finding out what's going on out there and how to push back against it. So thank you all for being
we're just
here.
2 people. So any help that we can get, trying to keep an eye on things that need more coverage, we appreciate. So thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We appreciate you. We will see you next week, same time, same place, Fridays at 4 p.m. And if you find any stories that you think need coverage this week, shoot them over to us either on the at FOTG, is it _show?
Yes.
FOTG_show. Okay, that's what I thought, but I always get all my handles confused. So yeah, and then I'll see you guys tonight, 9:00 with Tara Reid on the Free Assange Vigil. We have a lot to talk about, so we will see you guys then. Thanks everybody.
Peace.